The millionaire entered an arranged marriage with a plain girl, but her true beauty left him speechless. He signed the marriage agreement without looking at her photo twice. A millionaire with more responsibilities than choices, agreeing to marry a woman he had never met. And she, a quiet girl fighting to keep her life from collapsing, had no idea her future husband believed she was nothing more than a practical solution. Neither of them knew that this cold arrangement would change everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The conference room inside Hale Dynamics was silent enough to hear the faint hum of the heating vents. Afternoon light filtered across the long oak table, catching on polished metal and glass. Lucas Hale, the 32-year-old self-made millionaire and CEO, stood with his arms crossed, staring at the folder that his grandmother had placed before him. Margaret Hale was a woman who never wasted words. Her posture was straight, her face composed, and her voice steady when she finally spoke. Lucas, the board wants clarity. The investors want reassurance that you will settle down. A marriage will stabilize our public image and secure your position. It is time. Lucas's jaw tightened. Marriage for image management is not marriage. It is strategy, Margaret replied. And strategy is how this family has survived for decades. She pushed the folder closer. Lucas opened it reluctantly, expecting another socialite or business partner's daughter. Instead, he found a simple profile. Elena Ward, 26, works multiple part-time jobs, caregiver for her mother. No scandals, no social spotlight, no ambition that could threaten the Hale family's influence. A small photograph paper clipped to the top showed a woman with soft brown hair pulled back, a plain sweater, and tired eyes that held a quiet strength. Nothing about her suggested the glamorous circles Lucas moved through. She looked ordinary, maybe even invisible in a crowd. Why her, he asked. Because she will not compete with your work. She will not chase your money. And she will not draw headlines. Margaret answered. She is respectful and humble. The arrangement will give her stability. It will give us peace. Lucas felt the weight of the moment pressing on him. His life had been shaped by duty long before he earned his first million. He had built a company from the ground up, but the family legacy still demanded pieces of him he never wanted to give. Margaret continued. Here are the conditions. Separate rooms. Appear together at 5 formal events. No interference in each other's private lives. 12 months, then dissolution. She will receive compensation and support for her mother's treatment. A contract marriage. A partnership without emotion. Lucas closed his eyes for a brief second, then opened them with a calm that did not match the storm inside him. He picked up the pen, holding it between his fingers before lowering it onto the paper. His signature flowed across the page. When he finished, Margaret nodded. The ceremony will be private. 3 weeks from today. She has agreed. Lucas shut the folder and stepped back from the table. The air felt heavier, as if the room itself had absorbed his decision. He had just agreed to marry a stranger. A woman chosen for convenience. A woman he believed would remain invisible in his world. He had no idea how wrong he was. The night after signing the marriage agreement, Lucas Hale sat alone in his penthouse office, staring at the city lights blinking below him. Chicago always looked alive at this hour, but he felt nothing but a slow, heavy quiet settling inside his chest. The contract was final. The date was set. In 3 short weeks, he would become a husband to a woman whose voice he had never heard. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. His assistant had already sent Elena Ward the official documents. She had signed them within an hour. That speed unsettled him. It meant she needed this arrangement desperately. It meant there was pressure on her side of the story he did not yet understand. He tried not to think about her photo. He tried not to think about the word plain that his grandmother had repeated so casually. But the truth was, something about Elena lingered in his mind longer than he wanted to admit. Maybe it was the quiet determination in her eyes. Maybe it was the fact that she had agreed to a life-changing contract without complaint. Or maybe it was the simple reality that she was now tied to him in a way that neither of them could escape. The next morning, the Hale family attorney arranged their first meeting. Lucas arrived at the designated café early, choosing a corner seat with clear sightlines. He needed to understand who she really was before he stood next to her as her husband. When the doorbell chimed and she stepped inside, Lucas recognized her immediately. She wore a modest knee-length dress, a gray coat too thin for the cold morning, and her hair was tied back in the same simple style from the photograph. Elena paused at the entrance, scanning the room nervously. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her, and she looked as if she wanted to blend into the wallpaper. She was not glamorous. She was not polished. But something about her stillness felt strangely grounding. Lucas stood. Elena. She turned, startled, and nodded quickly. Yes. I am sorry if I kept you waiting. Her voice was soft, careful, as if she was afraid of taking up too much space. He gestured for her to sit. We should talk about expectations. She folded her hands on the table. Yes. I understand the terms completely. I will not interfere with your work. I will attend the required events. I will stay out of the public eye unless necessary. And after 12 months, the arrangement will end peacefully. Her tone was steady, but her eyes revealed exhaustion. Not weakness, but the fatigue of someone who had been holding her world together with bare hands. Lucas studied her. This marriage will draw attention. Reporters, cameras, people who will judge everything about you. I know, she said quietly. People already judge me every day. This will not be new. Something flickered in his chest. He did not know if it was irritation or respect. He cleared his throat. We will have separate rooms. Professional boundaries. You will not be expected to play a role outside what we agreed upon. Elena nodded. Thank you. I appreciate the clarity. There was no resentment in her voice. No bitterness. Only practicality. They finished discussing logistics. Transportation. The ceremony. Her mother's medical treatment, which Lucas had already arranged to. Stabilized through a private clinic. When Elena saw the confirmation documents, her breath trembled. She bit her lip, lowering her gaze as her eyes glistened. Thank you, she whispered. You have no idea what this means. Lucas looked away. Her gratitude felt heavier than any accusation. When they stood to leave, Elena bowed her head politely. I will do my best to make this arrangement as smooth as possible. As she walked out, a thin strand of hair slipped loose and brushed her cheek. She tucked it behind her ear with a gentle motion that struck Lucas with unexpected force. There was a quiet dignity in her that the photograph had failed to capture. He watched her go, unable to shake the feeling that the contract he had signed was about to reshape more than just his public image. 3 days after their first meeting, Elena Ward arrived at the Hale residence for the initial preparation required before the wedding. Lucas had offered to send a car, but she politely declined, choosing instead to take a rideshare and step out on her own terms. When she reached the gates, she paused beneath the towering ironwork, her breath visible in the cold Chicago air. The Hale estate looked like another world entirely, a place built from a kind of wealth she had only seen in magazine pages left on waiting room tables. A security guard guided her inside. The foyer sparkled beneath a chandelier large enough to light an entire apartment. Polished floors reflected the warm glow, and every detail felt intentional, curated, and impossibly distant from her life. She stood there, clutching the strap of her worn handbag, when Lucas Hale descended the staircase. He had traded his usual suit for a simple charcoal sweater and dark trousers, but he still carried the quiet authority of a man who was used to organizing the world around him. Elena, he said, stopping a few steps from her. Welcome. She nodded politely. Thank you. This place is very beautiful. It is functional, Lucas replied. The staff will help you prepare for the events we discussed. You do not need to worry about anything outside the schedule. He motioned for her to follow him as several members of the household staff appeared. A stylist, a tailor, and a woman who introduced herself as Mara, the etiquette consultant hired for the next 2 weeks. Elena straightened her posture. I promise I will learn quickly. You do not need to become someone else, Lucas said. His voice was even, but his eyes did not linger on her for long. You only need to meet the basic expectations. Basic expectations. The words were clinical, almost cold, but she accepted them with a steady breath. She had entered this arrangement by choice, and she intended to hold her end with dignity. The stylist began by measuring her shoulders and waist. Elena held still as pins clicked, fabrics swished, and voices murmured around her. They brought out elegant dresses, muted colors, soft textures, and tailored coats suited for winter charity events and corporate dinners. Nothing flashy, nothing bold. It was as if they were building a version of her that could stand beside a millionaire without drawing unwanted attention. Yet something subtle happened as the fittings continued. A soft blue dress brought out the warmth in her eyes. A simple hairstyle highlighted the gentle curve of her neck. She still looked like herself, just a version untouched by exhaustion and constant worry. When she stepped in front of the mirror, she barely recognized the calm woman staring back. Mara, the consultant, offered a small smile. You carry yourself well. It will not take long for you to feel comfortable in these settings. Elena lowered her gaze. I do not want to embarrass him. Lucas's reflection appeared behind her in the mirror. He had been observing the session quietly from across the room. She had not realized he was watching. You will not, he said simply. The certainty in his tone made her chest tighten for a moment, though she did not understand why. Later, Mara guided Elena through the basics of formal greetings, posture, dinner etiquette, and how to handle the cameras that would appear at their public events. Elena followed every instruction without complaint, repeating motions until they became natural. Lucas watched from a distance, arms crossed, expression unreadable, but something tugged at him each time she concentrated. She was not glamorous, but she was graceful. Not bold, but steady. There was a quiet determination in the way she moved, in the way she breathed through her uncertainty. It was unexpected. It was disarming. When the session finally ended, Elena gathered her coat. Thank you for today, she said softly. I hope I met your expectations. Lucas hesitated, then spoke with an honesty he had not planned. You exceeded them. Elena blinked, surprised, but she did not respond. She simply bowed her head and walked toward the door, her steps light but purposeful. As she left, Lucas found himself watching her again. He had chosen her for convenience. He had expected compliance, not presence. But Elena Ward carried something he had not accounted for, something he could not ignore. The 2 weeks leading up to the wedding passed with a steady rhythm that neither Lucas nor Elena had anticipated. Every morning, she arrived at the Hale residence for training, fittings, and rehearsals. Every evening, she returned to her small apartment to check on her mother and prepare for the next day. It was a strange routine, a bridge between two worlds that did not belong to each other. By the end of the second week, Mara, the etiquette consultant, declared Elena ready for her first public appearance with Lucas. It would be a charity dinner hosted by Hale Dynamics, a gathering filled with investors, partners, and social figures who loved to dissect every detail of the Hale family. The morning of the event, Elena arrived early. The stylist arranged her hair in a soft, low twist and chose an ivory dress that draped elegantly without drawing too much attention. She looked simple, composed, and quietly beautiful in a way that did not need glamour. Lucas noticed it instantly when he entered the room. He had expected her to look nervous, fragile, or overwhelmed. But Elena stood with her shoulders gently squared, her fingers resting lightly on a small clutch, breathing slowly the way Mara had taught her. She looked calm. She looked prepared. Are you ready? Lucas asked. Elena nodded. As ready as I can be. They left together, riding in the same car for the first time. The silence between them was not uncomfortable, but charged with something both uncertain and strangely familiar. Elena watched the city lights pass by through the tinted windows, while Lucas occasionally glanced at her reflection, faintly mirrored in the glass. When they arrived at the hotel ballroom, flashes erupted instantly. Photographers turned, assistants whispered, and guests shifted their attention toward them with hungry curiosity. Lucas stepped closer to her without thinking, positioning himself slightly ahead to shield her from the sudden noise. Stay close, he said quietly. She did. Inside, the ballroom glowed with warm lights and polished accents. Waiters moved in elegant patterns. Conversations buzzed in every corner. The moment they entered, the attention followed them like a spotlight. A pair of women in glittering dresses approached, their smiles sharp. So this is your fiancé, one said, her voice dipped in false sweetness. She is very simple. Another woman added, you always did prefer surprises, Lucas. I suppose this one is humble. Elena felt her face warm, but she kept her posture steady. Lucas opened his mouth to respond, but Elena gently touched his arm, a soft gesture meant to stop a conflict before it began. It is all right, she said quietly. Then she turned to the women with a polite smile. Thank you for welcoming me. I hope you both enjoy the evening. Her voice was steady. Her eyes did not waver. The moment passed like a breeze she refused to let shake her. The two women blinked, caught off guard by her grace, and stepped away without another word. Lucas stood still for a moment, watching Elena with a look he had never worn before. Respect. Surprise. Something deeper beneath it. You handled that well, he said. Elena gave a small shrug. People often underestimate me. I stopped taking it personally a long time ago. He felt something shift inside him, a quiet weight rearranging itself. Later in the evening, during the formal dinner, a minor crisis erupted when one of the speakers fell ill unexpectedly. Staff scrambled to adjust the schedule, leaving a gap in the program. Guests whispered. Tension rose. Before Lucas could intervene, Elena stepped forward, offering to help coordinate the schedule because she had experience managing last-minute issues at her part-time job. She spoke calmly to the staff, reorganized the sequence of presentations, and reassured the anxious guests with her soft, steady voice. By the time everything settled, Lucas found himself watching her again. She had been chosen for silence. She had been chosen for convenience. But Elena Ward carried something far stronger. Something that made the room listen. The charity dinner ended more smoothly than anyone expected, largely because of Elena's calm intervention. When Lucas escorted her out of the ballroom toward the waiting car, a strange quiet wrapped around them. Not awkward, not cold, but thoughtful. As the driver closed the door behind them, Lucas glanced at Elena, trying to understand how someone so gentle could handle pressure with such clarity. You surprised me tonight, he said finally. Elena folded her hands in her lap. I am glad I could help. That was more than help, Lucas replied. You handled a room full of investors and critics with more composure than most executives. Elena looked out the window at the passing city lights. I have worked with difficult people for many years. I learned to stay steady when everything feels loud. Her voice carried a quiet truth that lingered between them. The following days passed with increasing momentum. The wedding date was approaching, and both families were preparing for the ceremony. It would be small, private, and controlled, exactly as the marriage agreement required. But before the ceremony, Lucas and Elena needed to appear together at one more major event, the Hale Foundation Winter Gala. This time, Elena arrived at the estate with her hair curled softly and a navy evening dress that complemented her warm tone. She looked effortless, yet undeniably elegant. When she stepped into the foyer, Lucas paused mid-sentence with his assistant. For a brief moment, he forgot what he was discussing. You look, his voice caught, and he cleared his throat. You look very presentable. Elena smiled politely. Thank you. The stylist did a wonderful job. He offered his arm, and she took it gently. Their connection felt natural, as if they were stepping into a rhythm neither of them expected. The gala was held at a grand downtown venue, a historic hall with high ceilings and crystal chandeliers. The moment they entered, a wave of attention swept toward them. Reporters angled their cameras. Influential guests paused mid-conversation. Elena kept her posture steady and matched Lucas's pace perfectly. But no event flowed without challenges. During the reception, an influential board member named Charles Grant approached them with a smile that did not reach his eyes. He looked Elena up and down as if assessing an object, not a person. So this is the future, Mrs. Hale, he said. I must admit, she is far more ordinary than I expected. The comment cut through the surrounding chatter. Elena inhaled slowly, steadying herself. Lucas felt the sharpness of the insult, but before he could speak, Elena addressed Charles directly. There is comfort in being underestimated, she said softly. People reveal their true character faster. The surrounding guests fell silent. Charles raised an eyebrow, but he had no response. He stepped away with a stiff smile, his confidence punctured. Lucas stared at Elena with a stunned expression. You handled that with precision. I only spoke the truth, Elena said. People like him do not unsettle me anymore. But moments later, as they stepped onto the balcony for fresh air, Lucas saw the truth beneath her composure. Her fingers trembled slightly as she touched the railing. You are shaking, he said gently. It is only the cold, she replied, but her voice wavered. Without thinking, Lucas removed his coat and placed it around her shoulders. The gesture was simple, but the weight of it settled between them. Thank you, she whispered. For the first time since signing the contract, he looked at her not as an obligation, not as a silent partner, but as a person standing bravely beside him despite every unfair assumption. He spoke quietly. You do not deserve how people speak to you. Elena met his eyes. I have been spoken to worse. I got used to surviving. Her honesty cracked something inside him. He had built his success through strategy and strength. She had built her resilience through wounds and persistence. And tonight, for the first time, Lucas wondered what she might become if someone truly stood with her instead of against her. The ride home from the winter gala unfolded in a gentle silence. The city lights drifted past the car windows like falling embers, warm and muted. Elena sat beside Lucas, wrapped in the coat he had placed around her shoulders. She held it close, not only because of the cold, but because of the rare kindness it carried. Lucas watched her from the corner of his eye, noticing the way her fingers curled softly around the fabric, as if she had not been held gently in a very long time. When the car pulled up to the Hale residence, Lucas stepped out first and offered his hand. Elena hesitated for a brief second, then accepted the gesture. His hand was steady and warm, grounding her in a way she did not expect. They walked into the foyer together. The house was dim, quiet, almost echoing, as if it sensed the shift between them. You should rest, Lucas said. His voice was softer than usual. It was a long night. It was, Elena agreed. But it was better than I feared. She handed back his coat. Their fingers brushed for the briefest moment, and both of them froze, not in discomfort, but in awareness. It was the first time touch did not feel like obligation. Lucas cleared his throat. There is something I want to show you. Elena blinked, surprised. Tonight? Yes. It will only take a moment. He led her down a quiet hallway to a room she had not entered before. When he opened the door, warm light spilled out. The space was filled with art pieces and framed photographs from various Hale charity programs. But the center of the room featured something different. A large window overlooking the city skyline, a small seating area, and a shelf filled with books related to design, architecture, and creativity. This is the reflection room, Lucas explained. I come here when the world feels too loud. Elena stepped inside slowly, as if she was afraid of disturbing the stillness. It is beautiful. Lucas watched her take it in. I thought you might like it. She turned to him, eyebrows lifting slightly. Why would you think that? You pay attention to details, he said. At the dinner, you notice things most people ignored. And during your etiquette sessions, you always focused on form, balance, and presentation. People who observe like that usually enjoy quiet spaces. Elena's lips parted slightly, stunned that he had noticed anything about her beyond the terms of their contract. You see more than you admit, she said gently. Lucas did not respond at first. Instead, he sat on the bench near the window and motioned for her to join him. She hesitated again, then sat beside him, leaving just enough distance to be respectful, but close enough to share the same pocket of warm light. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. The city stretched out before them like a field of stars. The view reflected in the glass, placing their silhouettes side by side, strangers bound by circumstance, but no longer untouched by each other. Lucas broke the silence. Elena, do you ever feel like you are living a life that is not entirely yours? She inhaled slowly. Every day, I have spent so much time caring for everyone else that I sometimes forget what I want. What do you want? He asked softly. She did not answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I want to be seen. Not judged. Not dismissed. Just seen. Lucas felt the words hit him like a quiet blow. He had built his reputation on control, ambition, and indifference. Yet here she was, revealing the simplest desire, and it felt heavier than any business deal he had ever signed. I see you, he said. Elena's breath trembled. She did not look at him, but he saw the shift in her posture, the way her shoulders loosened just enough to show relief. They stayed in that room for a while, sitting side by side, two souls caught between distance and closeness. Neither of them said another word, but something changed. Something subtle. Something irreversible. The days following their quiet moment in the reflection room carried an unfamiliar warmth. Lucas found himself replaying Elena's words, the softness in her voice, the trembling breath she tried to hide. He noticed things he had ignored before. The careful way she spoke to the staff, the patience she showed in stressful moments, the resilience behind her quiet eyes. She was no longer just part of a contract. She was becoming a presence he could not look away from. But peace never lasted long in the Hale world. The shift began on a gray Thursday morning. Lucas arrived at Hale Dynamics earlier than usual, prepared for a routine meeting, when his assistant rushed into the hallway with panic written across her face. "Mr. Hale, I think you need to see this," she said, handing him a tablet. On the screen was a headline from a gossip site, followed by several reposts across major platforms. The words felt like ice. Millionaire Lucas Hale's fiancée accused of using marriage to erase medical debt and secure long-term financial support. Below it were blurred, edited photos of Elena outside the clinic where her mother received treatment, paired with captions spinning her into a manipulative gold digger. The comments were worse, tearing at her appearance, her background, her intentions. Lucas's expression darkened. "Who posted this?" "We are tracking the source now," his assistant replied. "But it appears to be tied to a competitor or someone close to the board." Lucas did not need more explanation. A familiar name surfaced in his mind: Charles Grant. The man had already shown disdain for Elena at the gala. Sabotage was in his nature. Before Lucas could respond, his phone buzzed again. It was his grandmother. "Lucas," Margaret said sharply the moment he answered. "Have you seen the news?" "Yes." "This is unacceptable. You need to address it immediately, before the shareholders meet this afternoon." Lucas clenched his jaw. "Elena has done nothing wrong." "That does not matter," Margaret replied. "The perception is damaging. If you wish to protect the company, you must consider ending the arrangement." He froze. "End the arrangement? You want me to abandon her because of false accusations?" "I want you to protect your inheritance," she said. "This girl is already creating complications. Imagine what happens after the wedding." Before Lucas could argue, his grandmother ended the call. He stood there, the tablet still in his hand, anger building slowly, like pressure beneath stone. He had expected resistance, but not this. Not cruelty disguised as strategy. He left the office without a word and drove straight to Elena's apartment. When she opened the door, she looked tired, her eyes shadowed with worry. She had seen the headlines. "I am sorry," she said quietly before he could speak. "I did not want to cause trouble." Her voice held no anger, only a weary sadness that made his chest tighten. "You did not cause this," Lucas said. "Someone targeted you." Elena lowered her gaze. "Maybe this is why people like me do not belong in your world." "That is not true. I have lived my entire life being judged for what I look like, for what I do not have," she continued softly. "I thought I could endure it again. But this feels crueler. Not just to me, but to my mother." Her words cracked something inside him. He stepped closer. "You will not face this alone." Elena shook her head. "But your family." "My family does not get to decide everything," he interrupted. "And they certainly do not get to decide your worth." Her breath trembled again, the same way it had in the reflection room, but this time it was pain instead of vulnerability. "I do not want to ruin your reputation," she whispered. Lucas spoke with a firmness she had never heard from him before. "Elena, you are not ruining anything. Someone is trying to destroy you, and I will not let them." For the first time, a flicker of fear crossed her eyes. This marriage was supposed to be simple. It stopped being simple the moment people chose to hurt you. They stood in her doorway, the air heavy with uncertainty and unspoken connection. Lucas reached out, not to touch her, but to steady himself on the doorframe. "I promise you this," he said quietly. "I will find who did this, and I will protect you." Elena looked up at him, eyes glossy with tears she refused to let fall. In that moment, their contract felt smaller than the space between them, smaller than the truth slowly forming in his heart. The next morning felt heavier than the winter sky outside. Lucas arrived at Hale Dynamics before dawn, fueled not by routine, but by a fierce, focused purpose. He had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the worry on Elena's face, the tremble in her voice, the way she tried to carry all the pain alone. He would not let her carry this one. His security team had worked through the night to trace the leak. By 8 o'clock, Lucas stood in the boardroom with a folder in his hand, the same way he had stood weeks ago when the marriage arrangement was first proposed. But this time, the air around him was not cold indifference. It was quiet, controlled rage. The board members filed in. Whispers filled the room. Headlines from the previous day glowed on their tablets. Margaret Hale sat at the center of the long table, her expression unreadable. "We will begin," she announced. We must discuss the fiancé issue immediately. Lucas cut her off. No. We will discuss the source of the attack. The room fell silent. He placed the folder on the table and opened it slowly. One by one, he distributed the printed screenshots, emails, timestamps, digital footprints. All of it connected to one name. Charles Grant. The very same man who had mocked Elena at the gala. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Margaret narrowed her eyes. Charles, is this true? Charles stiffened, his confidence crumbling. This is ridiculous. Those documents could be fabricated. This girl is distracting our CEO, and Lucas slammed his palm onto the table, the sound echoing like thunder. Her name is Elena Ward, and she has done nothing but honor the arrangement we forced her into. You attacked her reputation, her dignity, and her family. You leaked private medical visits and manipulated the photos. You wanted to break her before the wedding even happened. Charles attempted to stand, but Lucas fixed him with a cold stare. You targeted a woman who had no power, no voice, and no intention of harming anyone. And you did it to influence this board. The silence in the room thickened. Lucas continued, his voice low but powerful. I have already forwarded every piece of evidence to legal and to the authorities. You will resign today, or you will face the full consequences. Charles looked around the room for support, but every face had turned away. He left without a word. When the door slammed shut behind him, Lucas took a steadying breath. Margaret broke the silence first. Lucas, your loyalty is admirable, but you must consider. No, he said firmly. I have seen Elena judged for her clothes, her background, her quietness. But I have also seen her grace, her strength. She does not seek power. She does not manipulate. She does not pretend. The board members shifted uneasily as Lucas continued. The arrangement began as a contract. But this family will not build stability on cruelty. Not at her expense. Margaret pursed her lips. Are you saying you intend to continue the marriage fully? Lucas did not hesitate. Yes. Several board members exchanged stunned glances. This is not about image any longer, Lucas said. This is about what is right. He gathered the scattered papers and closed the folder. I stand with her. And if anyone here has a problem with that, then they should reconsider their place in this company. The room fell completely silent. Lucas left without waiting for approval. He had made his decision long before he entered the room. Outside the building, the winter wind bit at his skin, but he barely felt it. He got into his car and told the driver exactly where to go. Elena's apartment. When she opened the door, she looked tired, wary, as if she expected more bad news. Lucas shook his head. It is over. The man who attacked you is gone, and I defended you in front of everyone. Elena blinked in disbelief. Why would you do that? He stepped closer, his voice steady and unguarded. Because you deserve to be protected. Because you deserve to be seen for who you truly are. Her breath caught. And because, he added, quietly, this is no longer just a contract to me. For a moment, Elena stood frozen in the doorway, hearing the words she never expected him to say. Lucas Hale, the man who had first approached her with a contract instead of affection, now stood in front of her with a sincerity that softened everything in the room. This is no longer just a contract to me, he repeated quietly. I wanted you to know that. The hallway light framed him in a faint glow, revealing the exhaustion in his eyes and the resolve beneath it. Elena stepped back slightly, allowing him into the apartment. The small living room felt humble compared to the Hale estate, but Lucas did not seem out of place. In fact, he looked more grounded here than he had in any boardroom. Elena's voice trembled. I do not understand. You defended me in front of the entire board. You risked everything for me. What? Lucas looked at her, really looked, as if the answer had been building inside him for weeks. Because you stood in a world that was not kind to you, and you did not break. You showed grace when people tried to humiliate you. You helped strangers at events that were supposed to intimidate you. You carried dignity even when the world tried to strip it from you. Her breath caught in her throat. And, he continued, because when you said you wanted to be seen, something inside me shifted. I spent my life surrounded by people who pretend to understand me. You were the first person who made me feel present. Elena lowered her gaze, overwhelmed. The words she had needed her entire life were now spoken by a man she had never thought would truly notice her. Lucas, she whispered, I never wanted to complicate your life. You did not complicate it, he said gently. You changed it. The weight of the moment pressed softly around them. Lucas reached into his coat and revealed a small envelope. Before I left the office, I made one more decision. I moved your mother to a better medical facility. A private room, full care. She will not worry about bills again. Tears filled Elena's eyes instantly. Lucas, you did not have to. I wanted to, he said. Because she raised the strongest person I have ever met. Her tears fell freely now. She covered her mouth, overwhelmed by relief, gratitude, and something deeper she could no longer hide. He stepped closer, slowly, giving her every chance to step back. She did not move. Elena, he said softly, I would like us to start again. Not as a millionaire fulfilling a contract. Not as two strangers forced into a marriage. But as two people choosing to walk forward together. The room seemed to grow warmer, as if the world outside had paused to hold this moment still. Elena wiped her tears with the back of her hand. What if I disappoint you? You have done nothing but exceed every expectation, Lucas replied. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you are not plain. You never were. You were simply unseen. She let out a trembling breath, one that carried weeks of fear dissolving at once. Then yes, she whispered. I would like to start again. Lucas smiled, a real one, the first she had seen from him without restraint. He reached for her hand, and this time, she placed her fingers in his without hesitation. A few weeks later, they stood in a quiet garden behind the Hale residence. No reporters, no stage cameras, no contracts, only a minister, a handful of staff members who genuinely cared for them, and the soft winter sunlight brushing Elena's cheeks. When Lucas lifted her veil, he paused, breath-catching. She was radiant not because of makeup or a gown, but because she finally stood in a place where she was truly seen. You are breathtaking, he whispered. Elena smiled, tears shining. So are you. They exchanged vows born from choice, not obligation. When Lucas kissed her, it was not the fulfillment of a contract, but the beginning of something real. Two lives, once bound by necessity, now bound by love. And from that day forward, the world no longer saw a plain girl beside a millionaire. It saw a woman who stood with quiet strength, and a man who finally learned what it meant to love.